Welcome, beautiful souls, to another Yatra Sister podcast. I'm Sharita.
And I'm Allison.
And we are here today to have another amazing and interesting conversation with you.
What are we talking about, Sharita?
So today, I think we're going to talk about pleasures.
Ooh.
I know.
Pleasures.
Pleasures.
I love pleasures.
Me and you both.
I think a life without pleasures is absolutely dull, disgusting, and I try to think as many dramatic words as I can think of. A life without pleasures
is pleasureless.
It is pleasureless.
And it's lifeless.
Sad.
Yeah, I agree.
It makes me want to cry.
I agree.
But you know,
yes,
pleasures, you do have to have some rules with your pleasures.
Oh, okay. All right. Help me here, because I usually don't, and that's what gets me in trouble.
Well, this is true. I have been with you many times that you've talked me past the line of pleasure. So this is my line. This is my favorite line.
Okay.
May the pleasure outweigh the consequence.
That is a dangerous statement for me.
Why?
Because what if I think of the pleasure if I put the pleasure at 90 and my consequence at 10?
Then you do the pleasure.
Even though my consequence is really a 90 and my pleasure should be 10.
No.
Okay.
No.
Doesn't work that way.
No. If the pleasure outweighs the consequence, you will know that, because you won't repeat huge consequences over and over again.
Girl, I did. I was married twice to the same type of person.
But that was not a pleasure.
It was fun in the beginning. It was pleasure. It started that way.
Well,
that doesn't count.
Lots of pleasures start out as nectar and turn to poison.
Oh, yes. I like that. I like that.
And that's something that I do think. You know, most things that start out as nectar turn to poison. That's why you need to know when to stop drinking the nectar before it turns to poison.
Okay.
Right?
Correct.
And some poisons start out as poison, but if you stay with it with a discipline, it'll, eventually turn to nectar.
That's beautiful. I like that.
Discipline eventually turns to devotion.
I like that. That's a beautiful way to look at it. I've never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
I like that. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if your pleasure is outweighing the consequence, there are some pleasures that absolutely are off the table, though.
Really? What are they?
Well, I have some private ones. Like that, I would need a safe word.
Okay.
But no, I'm just not going to go there. I mean, it might be pleasurable for someone else, but not for me. No, I think universal. If a pleasure causes violence, it's off the table.
I agree. I agree
violence
with that.
to your mind, your body, your soul. Ahimsa. Non-violence. So
I totally
pleasure
agree.
cannot contain any violent component.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think a pleasure that cannot be done in moderation is off the table.
Okay. So, what's your idea of moderation?
An addiction. Like, I do not do drugs, but you know why? Not because I think drugs are bad.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't do drugs because I wouldn't be able to do them in moderation.
Okay.
When the drug dealer says, hey, do this, it'll be fun. No shit. I already know that.
Correct.
That's why I don't do it. Because then I'll be like, that was so much fun. I'll do it again the next day and the next day and the next day.
Yeah, and then you will graduate and become like a squirrel on crack.
Yes.
I agree.
So I know that about myself.
Okay.
So a pleasure that cannot be done in moderation, I think is a bad pleasure.
I agree with that too. 100%.
If you can do it in moderation, I'm blessed. I can drink and not have an addiction. There are some people that cannot.
This is true. This is true.
I feel very sad for that.
I do too.
I'm very blessed that I'm able to drink sometimes past that evening, past a level of moderation. Because my pleasure is going to outweigh my consequence. Usually if I'm going to heavily drink, I'd like to involve a hotel room.
Okay.
Sex.
Ooh.
Drinking.
Yes.
Everything. Good food.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to waste
it's
my
an experience.
Pleasure. Again,
it's an experience.
Yes, I want my pleasure to outweigh my consequence.
Yes.
But I don't want my consequence to be an addiction.
Okay.
That sucks.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think the third rule to pleasures is that you shouldn't be attached to it. Meaning you shouldn't feel like I can only be happy if I'm doing this pleasure.
Okay, so what if every time you do that pleasure, you're always happy? Is that okay?
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if it's not causing violence and you're not addicted to it.
Okay.
Oh, are you addicted to it?
I don't know.
Oh, what
Am
pleasure
I?
are we speaking of?
I mean, there are several.
Yeah.
Several.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I have pleasures that I'm not willing to announce on this podcast.
Yes, you
but-
said safe word.
Yes. So say safe word.
Safe word.
I have a few pleasures that are probably violent to myself, not to others.
Okay.
I don't mean that extreme. That sounds crazy.
So-
but it's probably not a healthy thing to do to my body.
I was gonna say, can you clarify violence? Because I think sometimes we hear that word and we have a certain image of what violence is. But when you say not violent to your body or yourself, what do you mean?
Meaning it's harming me on
Okay.
an ongoing basis. If I know I am an alcoholic and I keep drinking knowing it's hurting my liver and eventually going to kill me, then is it really a pleasure at this point?
Correct. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Right.
I understand that. Yeah.
But if I can control it somewhat, and I'm aware that I can control it, and it doesn't and has very tiny consequences, then I'm going to keep doing it.
True.
I heard this joke one time. This joke is funny. This man walked in to like this astrological doctor that lines up your stars, and he takes all your blood work, and he gives you this printout of basically your life. And
Okay.
so this man walks in, and he said, "I'd like to know how I've been living." And the astrological doctor, with all his blood work and his stars, lined it all up, and he says, "Well, you're probably going to die at 74."
Ooh.
The guy did that. Like, oh gosh, no, terrible. Oh my gosh. So he leaves and he comes back and he says, "Okay, doc, what if I start eating better? I exercise better. I cut out all alcohol. I don't do any types of smokes. I don't do anything. I run every day. What would that do?"
Okay.
And the doctor leaves and he lines up the stars and he comes back and he says, "You'll live to 76.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
Right?
Right.
So maybe that's even violently living.
That's true.
Because you have gone so extreme in removing pleasures from your life that you actually didn't even increase your life expectancy.
And you didn't really enjoy it.
No.
Okay.
Well, okay, so Sharita, we have a friend here.
We do, and I'm so excited for you to
know.
introduce her.
She's another Yatra sister.
She is
She's-
in beautiful soul
Oh,
and
beautiful.
amazing.
And she's
Absolutely.
from South Africa.
Hey everybody.
This is Dinda. She's got the sexy voice.
You really do.
No,
Oh
come
my.
closer so they can hear your sexy voice.
Yes.
Hey everybody. It's so lovely being here. And while you were talking, my brain was racing away,
Was
from and I have so many questions.
Yes.
When do you know you've lost your pleasures?
Oh.
You want to take that one?
Do you know?
When? Okay. Not right now. Not right at this second. But the question is, when do you know you have lost your pleasures?
Do you mean that you're feeling sad because nothing has the same taste as it used to? Meaning the things that used to give you pleasure don't anymore?
Sometimes that's a realization, but it's like a delayed realization. It's like you go through a few weeks or so and then you realize small things like I'm not smiling anymore, or something. And then, you sort of, and I wonder if you've got this question in your mind that comes up much quicker and say, did you lose your pleasures, that you can actually go and look for it again.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I think, and I was just talking about this with a client today, and we were talking about the chakra system. And your second chakra is how do you relate to pleasures, and it should be taught to kids between 8 and 14. And one of the things that we forget to teach them is that everyday living should have pleasures. We have gotten to where we don't sit down and eat and talk about the pleasure with the food. Yummy. This is delicious. Oh my God, this is great. We're on a rush. We forget that sleeping long periods of time is pleasurable. So we don't allow the kids to sleep. We call them lazy. You're sleeping too much. Maybe sleep can be pleasurable. So I was laughing saying, I'm not trying to act like I'm really great at things all the time, because I'm not, maybe 20%. But if I go to Starbucks and I buy my mocha frappuccino, I always stop my car. I never drink my mocha frappuccino like on a ride. This is if I'm by myself.
Ooh,
I
you savor
literally-
it. You
I
savor
do.
it.
I
Ah,
stop,
okay.
I roll down my windows, I sip on it, I look outside. I try to take just that and make it pleasurable. Because I think if we forget to do that, we are living a very life without pleasures. And the most pleasurable life you can have is when you're rested, fed well, good hygiene,
Important.
and you're living the simplest things and letting those feel pleasurable.
And you know, when I was just thinking about your question, Dinda, and I honestly think that when it comes to, because my hang up in life is fun and pleasure. Like those are two of the most important things to me. If I'm not getting that out of what I'm doing, then usually I lose interest very, very quickly. But when I think of pleasure, pleasure isn't something that is continuous as well. So it may not be that you lost your pleasure. It may be that your pleasure is now placed on something else of a greater value to you. That's how it works in my life. Because like I said, you say, hey, Sharita, we're going to have fun or it's pleasurable. And I'm like a dog. I'm like, okay, let's go do it. And, but I also know my pleasures shift and my pleasures change. And because what I found pleasurable before is less pleasurable now, it doesn't deduct from that for me. It just means that I've allowed myself to move on to a different pleasure and still have the same type of fulfillment, even though I'm doing something different.
Oh, God, Jess.
Yeah, so
Moving.
that's sort of a evolving. That's beautiful, because sometimes you want to, you're worried that something is not pleasurable anymore. But you've evolved. Something else has taken its place.
Correct. Yes.
That's a beautiful, beautiful thought.
When I
like
was
that.
young, going out late nights in a leather mini skirt and picking up men was pleasurable. Now, that makes me want to vomit. The idea of getting that skirt on and feeling my thighs sweat against each other because I've probably not the same size. Pleasurable for me right now is going to bed at 8 o'clock, right? And the light is still slightly out. And I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is so exciting. I can eat in my bed and watch a Netflix.
Yes.
So my pleasure has changed. I think that's a good point, Sharita.
Yeah.
But then, what I do pick up is, like you said, when you roll down your windows and you enjoy, that cup of, what did you say? It's frappuccino, mochaccino.
Mocha frappuccino.
Mocha frappuccino. It's actually a beautiful word as well. You sort of, you stay in the moment.
Yes.
So actually your whole day can be full of pleasures. You must just realize them.
Wow.
Most definitely. I like to call them bite-sized pleasures.
I like that.
It's very.
I like to
very
fill my
true.
day with as many bite-sized pleasures.
And yes, mine. I can never have too much pleasure. That's the way I look at my life. I can never have too much or too many pleasures.
You can,
But you
Sharita,
just-
by the way. You can.
Okay.
Don't give that advice out.
But I love what Dinda just said and what you just said is I never thought about creating a pleasure by taking the time to be in the moment and enjoy that thing. So that's like creating a pleasure that before I would just speed through because it's a part of life. But hearing what you two just said, it really makes me give pause and say, this small moment that I think we take for granted all the time is a pleasurable moment. It could be a pleasurable moment, right? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay.
Think about sex.
Oh, okay.
If you stay 100% present in sex, it's a lot more pleasurable than just trying to get through it. Now, we have sex with men.
Yes, you saw me
I
put my
did,
hand over my
and you
mouth.
started giggling.
No, I mean I wasn't giggling because it's funny, but I'm like, I never see it as getting through it. That's why I was
We
like,
don't either when you're with the right partner. I never think of that